Ladies and gentlemen, this house supports euthanasia for terminally ill patients. First, some definitions for the house. Euthanasia is the voluntary, medically assisted death of patients. Terminally ill is defined as certain to die within a span of 18 months. Now on to my case divide. Now side proposition supports euthanasia, firstly because patients have a right to die, secondly because this relieves stress on surrounding parties, and lastly because this results in the more practical distribution of resources. Now, what does the side proposition believe in? We believe that euthanasia should be made available to terminally ill patients. We also believe that patients should undergo thorough psychiatric procedures to ensure that death is really what they truly want. Now, we also stress that this must be voluntary, and if a minor or mentally ill patient seeks euthanasia, the adult who is in charge of them must also consent. Lastly, we state that we are still open to alternative treatment, such as counseling or more extensive medical procedures. Now, on to my first substantive. Patients have a right to live, but also this right to live extends to having a minimum quality of existence, which means that patients also have a right to die if they believe that this minimum quality has not been met. Now, what is this minimum quality? True, there is no legal definition of this minimum quality, but it is ultimately to be decided by the patients. Now, terminally ill patients suffer sensory loss, restricted mobility, as well as severe pain. Now, this may or may not cross the individual's threshold of what is a minimum living standard, but should it cross, the patient has two options: treatment and death. Now, obviously the patient will first seek treatment, perhaps going to the hospital, seeking counseling, emotional support from family members. However, should this fail, should the patient feel that whatever reward is to be reaped from life does not outweigh the negativity, then the patient may choose death. Now, to the healthy, privileged individual with experiences and relationships to look forward to, death sounds morbidly frightening. To want death, even, would be ridiculous for an individual such as you and I. However, death is an undeniable certainty. The difference between us and terminally ill patients is that we live in the blissful ignorance of not knowing when that time is. We can live our lives free from the baggage of knowing that whatever we build is soon to be stripped away from us. This gives us the best possible quality of life. However, terminally ill patients have a countdown timer staring them in the face. They can't build anything that lasts. They have no hope for a brighter future. They have no hope at all. Now, we concede that a few strong-minded patients may hold out against this pressure and pain. However, the vast majority prefer certainty and control over their deaths. And I must stress that this is a conscious choice. Nobody is imposing the exercise of the right to die on any patient. Side proposition simply chooses to leave this option open. Now we bring to the example of Sue Rodriguez in 1994. She is a 30-something-year-old mother who suffers from Lou Gehrig's disease. Now this disease entails muscular atrophy, slow muscular atrophy, which means that muscles will fail one by one until the patient eventually chokes to death. Now this is a horrific nightmare that the patient cannot wake up from. This woman was subjected to living an existence of terror. She begged, pleaded and wept for euthanasia. However, the courts were unwilling to legalize it to her. Eventually, a kind-hearted doctor covertly administered euthanasia to this woman. Now we believe that this existence of terror could easily have been spared of this woman. For such patients, prolonging living just extends dying. Now on side proposition, we believe that it is morally reprehensible for governments to refuse patients a relief from this horrifying, meaningless existence. We believe that in such a case, the only merciful choice that a government can make is to live and let die, to let a patient choose death, rather than force them into a meaningless existence. Now on to my next point, on relieving the stress on the parties around the patient. Now the premise of this argument is that terminally ill patients require immense support. They require support from medical professionals because the doctor has to carry out extensive machinated procedures to ensure that the functions of the organs that are failing the patient are now being met through external machines. healthcare professionals also have to monitor the state of these patients around the clock, which is an extreme burden on the doctors and nurses. And these patients also cling desperately onto the people closest to them for emotional support because they feel that they are falling apart. And patients may soon come to the conclusion that this elaborate procedure is not only draining on the people around them, but it's also draining on these people around them for no greater good. They may feel that this is not worth it. I bring to you the example of an elite swimmer who suffered an unfortunate accident and was left in a persistent vegetative state. Now this entails a patient lying on a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, and drifting in and out of consciousness. Now, in a particularly gruesome description, the patient described himself as half a brain attached to a corpse. Now we empathize with these patients because they have been unfortunately robbed of the basic physical functions required for an enjoyable, down-to-earth existence. Patients may feel that they are only hurting the people around them, providing an unnecessary burden to the doctors and nurses around them. Because they are only prolonging the dying process, ladies and gentlemen. They may feel that they are an emotional burden to their family. After all, why should their child, why should their spouse be afflicted with a presence that is, well, barely present, but still hauntingly close? We believe that this can only be a negative influence that detracts from a healthy family existence that would normally be harmonious between the members, but is now nothing but pain. Therefore, I have covered both sides of the spectrum of patients. There are patients who are emotionally distressed, and there are patients who have more mental fortitude. Patients who are emotionally distressed really can't come to terms with their reality. They fear a painful death, as it's not only instinctive, but is also natural. In this case, if patients cannot control their own feelings, then we believe that we should allow them to control their death. Rather than thrusting them into a living nightmare, we should provide relief. And as for those with more mental fortitude, who selflessly choose death over being a burden to the people around them, we believe that this is a commendable choice. And on both counts, our side takes the case. Thank you.